Conversations with Iris. Here's your host, my loving wife, Iris.
Hola, mi gente bonita. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Conversations with Iris, the little podcast that could, where every story just matters, where we heal, we grow, we laugh, and we just learn together. And let me tell you guys about today. Woo, mamma mia. Y'all, we are going to be diving into some real life, good stuff, real emotion, just some good old strength, and some of that good old stuff I love to call transformation. So if this is your first time tuning in, peoples, bienvenidos. That is welcome in Spanish. Welcome to this wonderful world, to my podcast world, and to my loyal listeners. You already know I love you guys. I really do. Don't forget to subscribe, download, listen, and share. I'm going to say it again. Subscribe, download, listen, and share. That could be a little ringtone too. Subscribe, download, listen, and share. I love that. And most importantly, please don't forget to leave me a rating on Apple Podcasts or even Spotify. Your rating would be like amazing right now. It will just help fuel this awesome podcast, the presence, the visibility, and of course, the growth of this little podcast that could, because that's what it was, or this is what it is. It just keeps growing. And also, don't be scared to write me something. Tell me how you feel. Tell me if an episode touched you. Guys, I literally read everything, and that would truly mean the world to me. So, hey, there's no excuses now. All right, now let me take you guys to our guests. As you know, as I mentioned, come on now. This show is about truth telling, healing, and just shining the light where people often just, let's be honest, we feel rather alone, right? And today I want to step into a conversation that is just powerful, courageous, and I feel like it's deeply important to all of us. So grab a little tea, a tissue, take a deep breath, settle in, because it's time to bring on a guest whose story I feel like in her mission will absolutely just stay with you. My wonderful guest today is the founder of the Been There, Got Out. You heard that correctly. Been There, Got Out, which is a high conflict divorce strategist. She's a certified domestic violence advocate, a successful pro se court warrior. You guys heard that correctly. Yes, this sister right here represented herself and she won, okay? She literally won. And overall, she's just a woman whose testimony helped pass Jennifer's Law, which has helped expand what the legal definition of domestic violence in the state of Connecticut really is. It is to include authoritative control over it. Let me say that again. Her case became legal precedent, and unheard of, someone representing of themselves. Her voice literally just changed the state law. And now this wonderful guest of mine just helps people all over the world navigating abusive partners and in the legal help that comes all with it. So she also runs a weekly legal abuse support groups and coaches men, women trying to survive narc abuse in the court, and just preparing to release a brand new book in January 2026 here coming up real soon. And it's going to be called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. Isn't that deep? Do you guys feel that in your spirit? Because I sure did. So without further ado, por favor, ayúdame a invitar. And that means, please let me help me welcome Lisa Johnson. Bienvenidos to Conversations with Iris. How are you?
Oh, bien. Thank you so much, Iris. What a welcome.
I told you. I always tell my guests, listen, I'm going to give you the best introduction you ever heard because that's what you deserve. And you got to get those flowers, okay?
I love how you set the scene. I feel like we're sitting on a couch together.
Yes, good. I would prefer maybe a margarita, like sipping on something. We could just have a conversation. So as you could tell, I'm a true extrovert. So if I sat down with you, girl, we would be talking for hours. I could have a friend in the desert.
I'm sure.
Oh my God, Lisa. So it's so awesome to have you here. And you know what, Lisa? I always say that God, the universe, whomever you believe in, will take your pain into something and turn it into a purpose, into your platform. And I feel like your story is the definition of that. So I would like for you to take us back to the beginning because you literally what you push into the courtroom alone representing yourself and how that journey unfolded into the legal precedent and ultimately helping you pass Jennifer's Law. That's pretty amazing, girl. Like that's what's up. So take us back. Let's unfold that chapter. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is Lisa Johnson?
Okay, so going way back, so I was a former backpacker. Like I traveled around Europe by
Ooh.
myself the summer after I graduated college. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life, and I actually wrote a book about it. That was my first book. And then after I came back, just to make a longer story much shorter, I was only about 23 when I met my future ex-husband.
Mm.
We ended up getting together and staying together for about 20 years. And I never imagined that we would separate. We had 2 kids together. We didn't really fight. I thought he was one of my best friends. And then one day I basically discovered that he had been living a double life the entire relationship.
Oh my
And
God. Are you
yeah, and
serious?
yeah. So one of my biggest fears was divorce, like breaking up the family. And I had been told that it would cost $10,000, and I just thought I don't even have the money for that. But more importantly, what's going to happen to us? Like I was always really involved in the community. I used to be a high school English teacher.
Mm.
I started a book sale for our library. I just was really tied into the schools and the libraries, and my kids were really settled. They only lived in this one place. And I couldn't imagine things really changing, especially for the kids. But it took about 2 years for me to sort of plan my exit. And those were the worst 2 years because I started discovering more and more things that I just couldn't believe had been happening behind my back. You can imagine. And finally, as they say, it became more painful to stay than to go. And so I spoke to an attorney about what it might look like to get divorced. And of course, I was terrified. And within 20 minutes, he said, yours is going to be a really bad one. And that was
What?
shocking
Oh
because
my God.
I couldn't understand why he felt that way. And years later, I interviewed him when our first book came out and was like, his name is Eric. I said, how did you know, Eric, that mine was going to be bad? And he came up with this number of factors that I didn't realize at the time were indicators of something called high conflict divorce. So in my state of Connecticut, once someone files divorce papers, it starts a clock ticking of about a year. So during that time, everybody tries, or they want you to try to settle it out of court, because the courts really don't have time. They're inundated with cases. And so I thought, we'll manage. We had already discussed this for 2 years. We had tried therapy, multiple couples counseling, individual therapists, etc. And so I just thought it would be fairly amicable, but instead it ended up costing $100,000 that I always say I'm going to pay back forever. So I had to take out loans and taking a full year. And at the end of that year, my lawyer said, listen, your ex-husband is not going to follow this agreement. We did agree 2 weeks before we went to trial. And he was
Wow.
completely right again. And he said, if you keep using me, he's going to continue to financially decimate you. So you're going to have to plan to go on your own. And what we need to do right now is to start establishing a paper trail. And so that was the beginning of what ended up being about 10 years in the legal system. And I always say it was about 7.5 years representing myself in the family courts, at the appellate court. And then long after, as we were trying to finish it up, he sued my partner, Chris, with Been There, Got Out, for $4 million, both of us, in defamation in civil court. And we got that taken care of ourselves too. So it was a very long,
Oh my
hard road.
goodness.
And like
Mm-hmm.
you said, I turned my pain into purpose. I've also heard the term turning your mess into your message. And
Oh, I love that.
yeah,
I love
so
that.
even though it was a very difficult time, throughout, I prevailed. It felt like it was never going to end. Things were really, really terrifying for me, for the kids, stuff that's happening in the court. And then but in the process, I realized that there was something that was happening to me that was happening to many people all over the world. I'd never heard the term legal abuse before, but that essentially means when you are in the legal system and the other person, for us, it's like an ex-spouse who's using the justice system to wear you down and bleed you dry financially as a form of still controlling you. And so that was my experience. And that was the thing I decided to start Been There, Got Out with my partner. And that's what we've been doing ever since. We're super busy and we work with men, like you said, men and women all over the world dealing with the same situation. And it can feel very isolating because our divorces and our separations are very different from what's considered normal. So it's so important to connect with other people who are living in this madness and getting through it with the least amount of pain as possible. So that's a long answer to your big question,
Oh
Iris.
no, Lisa, I love it, and thank you so much for the background and everything you went through. This is actually very eye catching. I actually know somebody right now that's going through the process of divorce. They're just getting started.
Mm,
But they don't live in Connecticut, so maybe a little bit different. But still, the divorces sound very draining in general. I'll tell you something in full transparency. I've been blessed. I've never been through a divorce. I have been through a separation and legal custody battle with
mm,
my son's father. And I could sit here and tell you that it is, even that process was very draining and very it was saddening. It takes like control over you. I mean, fighting for your baby, your legal custody, your time, it's horrible. But I definitely want to backtrack a little bit here because you provided some great insight. But I want to backtrack a little bit here because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm Latina and we're nosy like that. And we got to know, what was the double life
oh,
Eric's
okay.
husband was living? You got to tell us a
Yeah.
little
So
bit of that.
the juicy
The
stuff.
juicy girl. I gotta know. We nosy like that. I just gotta
Yeah,
know.
no, I don't mind at all. Yeah, so my ex was an IT guy, and when we first met in the 90s, I was a teacher. I still am not really into technology. I learn what I have to, but he spent a lot of time online, and so I didn't realize, but he basically had this secret life. And he sort of groomed me for it by saying like, well, I have to spend a lot of time on the computer, and
Hmm.
a lot of people don't really understand me because I'm really smart, and so I go to these chat rooms to connect to people. And he was 7 years older than me, and I in my mind just assumed that he was like super smart and really savvy, and I
Wow.
trusted him because he was the one who really pushed the relationship forward. And so I didn't realize that in those chat rooms and as technology progressed into higher levels of connecting with people all over the world, that he had been having all kinds of affairs throughout our entire marriage. It started with, I actually found out that during our honeymoon, and this was after we separated, 20
Yeah.
years later, but that he had been soliciting women, writing drafts of personal ads. There used to be this newspaper from New York City called The Village Voice that was really like artsy and avant-garde. And in the back, they had these really interesting personal ads. And so he had been writing all kinds of personal ads while we were on our honeymoon, and
Oh my
basically had
God.
kept this from me our whole relationship. So on the surface, he had this family, this beautiful home in this beautiful town, this successful career, but he did this thing called compartmentalizing, and he had just all kinds of other things going on. And so that was when I first discovered it. Our son had been helping him clean out stuff in the attic, and he always had like lots of papers all over the place, and they carried it downstairs to his office, and his office in the downstairs part of the house was next to mine. And I remember he had gone out to supposedly get an oil change, and everything always took like 2 hours, like things that should have taken 20 minutes would take
Yeah.
2 hours. And only looking back in hindsight, it was like, who knows what was going on during that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm.
But anyway, at the top of a pile of papers on his desk were a couple of photographs, and they weren't like sexy photographs, but they were of a very young woman. And I used to teach high school English, so I know what teenagers look like. He was 50 or
Oh
almost
my
50 around
God.
that time. And the way that she was looking into the camera was like a little bit, it was a little bit like inviting. And I just got this feeling in my stomach, like this is not, something is wrong. Like
Oh my
I
God.
feel sick. And so I called him and I was like, who is this person? He said, oh, well, I started doing art and I started just printing off pictures from the computer because I'm doing portraits. And I knew he was lying. That really disgusting, sick feeling you get, like
Yeah. You
acid
feel
in your
it.
stomach when
Yep.
someone that you care about is lying to your face. And I kept saying, please, like, I know you're not telling me the truth. Just please tell me the truth. Like, whatever this is, just tell me. And finally, after like 12 times, he said, well, that's actually my girlfriend. And we've never met before, but we met over Spotify. And I'm completely in love with her. And I'm going to move her to America and move her into one of my dad's apartments. But I'm not really sure what I'm going to do because I still love you too. And at that moment, I was like, oh my God, this
Wow.
person who I've spent half my life with, whose judgment I respected, who I thought was a sane person, is completely out of his mind. He's out of his mind.
Wow.
And I said, what do you think? What about our kids? And he was like, I don't know. We'll
Oh my
see. Like,
goodness.
it'll all work out. And I just, that was the moment in my head, like, we're done. We're done.
Wow.
And I just have to figure out what I'm going to do. And that began the next 2 years of trying to make sense of things, and figure out how to plan moving forward. But it was
Wow.
really mind blowing.
It really sounds like it. I mean, this started the whole ripple effect in 2 years and then later 7.5 years you mentioned you spent in the family courtroom. I mean, just draining you 100,000 dollars later. Like, come on now. That's like really, really serious here.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you so much for mentioning how the state of Connecticut is like immediately when you file your divorce proceedings and all that stuff, the clock starts ticking, which is a very eye opening for sure. And I know that we just spoke about like your ex and the double life. And I definitely want to like shift and talk about like the continued red flags. You mentioned how you just felt it in your gut. It's like woman's intuition, right? But I want to also talk about that legal abuse and protecting yourself because I feel like a lot of our listeners, as you mentioned, there is a lot of people going through this. I mean, they're dealing with like narcissistic exes, but they don't recognize the legal abuse that's happening physically, emotionally. I mean, financially, let's just say it. For someone thinking something is off, just like you did, what other red flags of legal abuse, like in high conflict divorces or custody battles, have you seen similar to this?
So actually, this goes back to what my lawyer told me, because at the time I had no idea what I was dealing with. And so there's a few different factors that we actually talk about in my second book, which is called Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. And all of them were from this interview with an attorney. His name was Eric Posmentier, who was just a lovely human being. But when you mention the different types of abuse, one of the big red flags that something is going to be difficult, like that it's going to be really hard to get out of this relationship, is when somebody hides assets. They act like the
Mm,
money is theirs. And that financial abuse or economic abuse, which is the term for something like that, is present in 99% of abusive relationships. So that looks like where you don't have access to the money, and you
funds, yeah.
don't get your questions answered. The other person, I'm not saying that it can't be people who are responsible for paying bills and doing different things, but it's when information is withheld from you, the person acts like what's theirs is theirs and what's yours is theirs too. Sometimes it looks like having to ask for permission to spend money, having to ask for an allowance, or just again, like not having a clue of what's going on because that other person is keeping that information away from you. So financial abuse is a big one.
Yeah.
Another thing in my own situation, in many cases, is when you're dealing with someone who has a personality disorder and or an active addiction. So you mentioned narcissism. I
Yeah.
didn't know at the time what that word meant. I think that word's become like a big, very popular in pop culture these
Yeah.
days, and we all kind of know what it means. But at the time, I had no idea. And so when somebody has a personality disorder like that, they're not logical, which means that they also aren't thinking with a rational mind, the same as an active addict. So someone who's addicted, I'm not talking about someone in recovery, but someone who's an addict can't make smart decisions for themselves. And that's why these are the cases that can go on for years and years and cost tons of money, because the other person isn't thinking about what might happen in the long run to the kids or to the money, or like if they just burn through money in the court system, there's going to be none left. They're so, which actually leads into another factor, which is anger that doesn't subside. So most people, when they separate or get divorced, everybody's angry at the beginning. So it all looks like high conflict. But normal situations, generally 4 to 6 months in, you say, oh my God, this is costing us too much money. Let's stop fighting so much. Let's just do what's best for the kids and start taking steps to move forward with our
Yeah.
lives. It's the opposite when you're dealing with someone with a personality disorder, because that anger just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, where even if they have a new partner, they'll still stalk you. They'll still continue the court battles, still, verbally and psychologically abuse you. And one of the worst things, which is what our next book is about, which you mentioned, is
Yeah.
to try to turn the kids against you. So those are a few of the indicators of really high conflict divorce that could
Oh
lead
my
to legal
goodness.
abuse.
And you know what? We just know so many people. My husband and I. We also know a really close family member of our friends, and she's been, I would say, in the court system for over 5 years. I don't know the exact amount,
Yeah.
but it's like you made me realize is more. I don't know. I think we're more focused on like we're dealing with this divorce battle. It could take years, but I think we're more focused on having the last word or
Mhm.
being right instead of looking at ourselves and saying, "Oh my God, this is emotionally and financially draining me. This is not healthy for me." I think that right now, just talking to you, I just realized that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it is so draining and it's very toxic for people. And I don't think that a person that's dealing with a divorce has been a divorce for years. They don't realize that, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean they feel it. They feel it, but one thing I think sometimes people don't think about when it comes to the impact of divorce and the cost of divorce, I should say, is it's not just the money that you spend in legal fees. It's the toll that it takes on your health, the time that it takes away from being able to do your job because you're so consumed by what's happening in the legal system. And also for people that have children, it's very hard to parent because you're
yeah.
so scared all the time about what might happen.
Oh my God. And that shared custody is tough. I don't care what people say. That is not a walk in the park. It is tough. It gets tougher as they get older. My son still feels the effects of it. It's damaged him a lot, you know. So,
Yeah.
and I hold that's a whole different, probably a separate conversation we would probably touch base on. But yeah, the emotional aspect of it. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, it's very draining for someone. But I definitely want to go back to how you represented yourself. Girl, that is like awesome. I just have to, give you some compliments there because that's girl
Thank you.
power. I feel like putting on Beyonce in the background and just like putting, girl, yes. I feel like that part is golden because representing yourself, you won and you made freaking legal history. That is what's up. And for somebody who's feeling overwhelmed or intimidated, can you give us some of those top strategies for helping people representing themselves effectively in the family court? Can you give us some little bit of a tidbits there?
Yeah, so it is not easy. I would never recommend getting a divorce without having an attorney because that's basically the foundation of your case. So I represented myself post divorce, or it's called post judgment. And that's why my lawyer said, like, I'm going to teach you. This is what we need to do. Once you have an agreement or a court order, it's a little bit easier because you already have what's like the basis of the law. So you have these orders or you have this agreement. And then when somebody violates that, you can go to court and say, this is the thing that I need help with, rather than the whole foundation of like just figuring out property, figuring out custody, all of that. But in this day and age, especially in America, and we have clients all over the world, we always say the laws are different, but the issues are the same. It is really, really expensive to get a divorce if it's not an amicable divorce. And so you really need to understand that you do the best you can, but if you have to, then you do represent yourself. If you are representing yourself, the other side often will hire an attorney that's like them. And like I said, our clients' exes they're all abusive people, and they often hire abusive attorneys who tend to be bullies. And so those bullies will use strategies to kind of knock you off balance in court. So knowing that one of the most important things to learn is to be unemotional and as calm as possible, because there's a lawyer who wrote the foreword to our first book. He's called The Recovering Litigator. His name is David Morneau, and he doesn't litigate anymore. But in an interview that we did, he was talking about how he loved going up against pro ses, meaning people that represent themselves.
Yeah.
He said, as soon as I'd get under their skin, they would lose the case. Because when we represent ourselves, it's our lives in the balance. A lawyer is paid to represent another person. So it's much easier job than you basically fighting for your life, especially fighting for your safety and for your kids. And so knowing that it's going to be really, really hard is important, and getting support to help get you through that. Another thing that's really important if you are representing yourself is to understand courtroom decorum. It's almost like the etiquette of the court. And I always think about court as the Wizard of Oz, where you're Dorothy and the judge is the wizard, and you are begging for something. And so if you go in with guns blazing, you're not going to do well. And a lot of times people will be like, I checked AI, or I know what the laws are, and I'm going to go tell the judge that, like, that's not going to happen. Another mistake people make in being pro se is thinking that they are going to have the ear of the judge for as long as it takes for them to tell their story and be validated. But that's not what court is for. And your time is so limited. So we always say that it's like you're paying $8 million for a 30-second Super Bowl commercial. So it's really important to learn something called front loading, which I say, from especially teaching high school English, it's almost like you have one paragraph where you go in and you're thinking about saying something like, Your Honor, this is what I'm asking for, and here's why I'm entitled to it. So you need to get really tight and succinct with what you need. It's not like you go in and you just start talking about things and imagining that it's like the movies where the judge is going to come in and punish your ex, because that just doesn't happen. So there's a lot of things to learn, but the best thing you can do is really connect to someone like me or a lawyer to figure out your legal rights, and then what it's going to take to build a very compelling, persuasive argument to get what you need to get and get out of there. But more importantly, I think, instead of imagining that you're going to go before the judge, there's a lot that you can do to try to keep it outside of court, especially through something we call strategic communication, where you're writing to your ex about things and trying to work out as much as you can yourself, even with the most high conflict people. It's important to remember that you were in this relationship with that person and you learned a lot of skills, and that you know them probably better than anyone. And so those survival skills will help you in terms of understanding what triggers them and understanding what calms them down. So these are really, really big topics, but all of this comes into play when we think about leverage in how you can manage to get through this process as calmly as possible, even though it's going to be really, really hard. But know that you're going to need support to get through it for sure.
Oh my goodness. And thank you so much for letting our listener know, the facts and the steps and how to appropriately, defend yourself. I mean, hey, seek your help too. And I want to talk about Jennifer's Law. Okay. I want to touch just a little bit, tap it on that, because you didn't just survive the system. You literally helped change it. I mean, that's awesome. But I feel like your testimony just played a major role in passing Jennifer's Law, because it helped expand domestic violence, what it means and all that stuff. And from all of this, how do you feel at the end, the result from Jennifer's Law? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, so Jennifer's Law is, so there's two things, like, so my case became case law, but my case is not Jennifer's Law. So Jennifer's Law is it's a law in Connecticut only, and it's covers something called coercive control. So
Yes.
in the past, when courts would think about custody and restraining orders, they would look at physical violence as the bar. Like if somebody either hurt someone physically or there was imminent threat of physical violence, then only that was really examined. So now with Jennifer's Law, there's with coercive control, they look at the bigger picture, like that invisible abuse. So not just physical abuse, but financial abuse, like we talked about, verbal, psychological, sexual abuse,
Yeah.
stalking, something called revenge porn, where if somebody's threatening, if you leave them, that they're going to publish sexual images of you to try to destroy your reputation or your family. Like all of that stuff is looked at again when it comes to making big decisions about families in the court system. So that was like a really big victory. Participating in giving live testimony for Jennifer's Law was exciting because we had wanted to do it in 2020, but then COVID shut everything down. Like there were a bunch of
Oh.
people that were going to go to the Capitol and give it in person. And so in 2021, we were still dealing with COVID, and so we were able to do testimony virtually, and there were about 108 people. I think I was speaker number 8, and we each had 3 minutes, and it went on for hours. I mean, there was like an actress named, I think, Evan Rachel Wood, who testified right before me.
Oh,
She
wow.
had been involved with the rock star Marilyn Manson, and she talked for a while about her situation, and then the judges were asking her questions. So it was really, really interesting, and I met all kinds of people who also participated in that, and we started doing some collaborations together. And then when it passed 6 months and went into effect 6 months later, it was like, wow, like something that was terrible that happened ended up like changing things. So Connecticut became the third state. And now I think there's 10 or 11 states in America. And I feel like there's a wave that's coming over our country. Like the UK has coercive control laws, Australia has it, and Ireland, different countries are starting to wake up and understand that domestic violence isn't just physical. There's all kinds of ways that people exert power and control over each other. And it's important to, again, look at that big picture.
Mm. And thank you so much for the clarification there on Jennifer's Law. At the end of the day, I feel like I'm going to be real, Lisa. You still helped past it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were involved, you know it, you lived it.
Yeah.
And that's what you preach on today when you're helping a lot of these individuals. So that's so awesome. And to go to Capitol and everything for it, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So, as we're coming to a closure here, I wanted to shift the conversation and just talk about like all your wonderful clients. So, I was reading a little bit about you because, I do a little scoop of my guests. And one of the things that I have to call you out on is how I adore how you and Chris call your clients sweetie pie. I love that word because I use that all the time.
I didn't expect you to say that. I was like, I wonder what she found.
Girl, I
Yes.
am different here. Come on. I'm telling you, I love to add that Latino pizzazz up in here. But I love that because I use that a lot. Thank you, sweetie pie. But I
Yes.
want to ask you something funny here. What
Mhm.
is it about those survivors, about the abuse and what they're going through that just makes them incredible human beings?
Okay, so we call our clients sweetie pies because people who have been in these awful relationships, and keep in mind this is generally 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men at some point in their life is going to be in an unhealthy relationship. And we tend to beat ourselves up after, being like, how could I have been so stupid to not realize that, what was
Yeah.
happening, and to not like see it for what it was immediately, and forgetting that these people are master manipulators. So the reason that our clients are the absolute best human beings in the world is because they're the kind of people that abusers target because they make them look good. Like abusers are parasites. They're not going to attach to something that's not incredibly valuable. And people who are targeted for these unhealthy relationships tend to be the most responsible, creative, empathic, amazing, successful human beings. And I just absolutely adore our clients. They are funny. they're clever, and
Real.
but we
Yeah.
unfortunately meet them in a state usually where they're a mess. And so we have a hashtag called From Puddle to Ninja. Many of our clients are they're highly successful, they're well educated, and they just feel awful because they're the ones who are role models in the community, and they feel like an added level of shame and really embarrassed because when people find out that they've been living with someone like this, they'll often make comments like, I never thought you, of all people, would fall for someone like that. Or why didn't you just leave, without really understanding the nature of domestic violence. And so it's really important for people to understand that you are, again, what we call our sweetie pies, our shining stars. Like, the reason you were targeted isn't because you're a weak person. It's because you're an amazing person that this other parasite broke down, and that you're going to come back with the right support. You're going to come back and thrive and shine even brighter. And we have the pleasure of seeing it happen to our men and women, because a lot of them stay with us for a while and they pop in and, check in with us and let us know how they're doing. And I'm going to just say, like, one of my, I hate to say one of my favorite clients because we have so many favorites, but
Don't do it. Just
one
kidding.
of our
Just
earlier
say it.
was an Indigenous woman. She was with somebody for years, her children's parent, who used to throw bottles at her face,
Oh
scream at
my
her, was
God.
awful to her. And when she finally got out, she had a restraining order against him, and he still was, years after they separated, just being awful. And so she met us. And she was a special ed teacher in her 40s, and she joined our legal abuse support group, and she hired us to coach her. And so after just a few times of meeting, she was like, you know what? I can't afford a lawyer, but I wonder if I can go back to court because he hasn't paid child support in like 2 or 3 years. And she, being a teacher, gave her the skills of knowing how to communicate very effectively. And she was pretty calm, and time had passed since the end of that relationship. So I was like, well, why don't we try it? Like, let's start putting the case together. So she was like super smart, and she researched and found some case law. She happened to also live in California, where there are coercive control laws. And she made this incredible binder, and she went before the judge and she pled her case. And the judge was so impressed that he was like, all right, I'm going to give you what you want, and give me your binder because this is amazing. Like, I want to take this seriously. But not only that, after that, so she got a new restraining order, she got the child support, but after that, she felt so good and confident about what she had done that she decided to go to law school. So
Oh my
she's now a
God.
trauma-based attorney. Being an Indigenous woman, there's only 2% of lawyers in this country like her. And now she's out there working in her community, helping other people in situations like she's been in. And I actually got to meet her in person when we went to California when our first book came out. And it was just like so amazing to be able to hug her and congratulate her.
Oh my God, what a beautiful testimony. That's amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Law is pretty like intimidating for sure. If you step in there, it's intimidating, but for her to like change and just become a lawyer herself, that's amazing, Lisa. That's
Mhm.
amazing. You help pave the way to that. That's definitely because of all your help and your efforts and what you are, your purpose, what you guys do. And Lisa, before we wrap up, I want to tell our listeners just everywhere where they're tuning in, where can they find you? I mean, we want to be able to check out your legal abuse support group, work with you and Chris, read your book, pre-order the 2026 book that you guys have coming up here soon, and just get into your online courses. Just we want to just catch you just 110%. Where can they find you and follow you?
Oh my gosh, Iris, I so appreciate that. So we're super easy. If you just type the words been there, got out, our website is beentheregotout.com. We are very active on social media. I do all the content myself. I love creating content. So if you just look up Been There Got Out, like on Instagram, you'll find us, TikTok, Facebook, etc. Like you said, our books are available. The first one and then the next one will be out in 2026. We have a whole series of courses coming out. It's called From Fear to Fierce in Family Court. And we have one on strategic communication that's called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind. Because we do that more than anything with everybody. And that's super helpful, especially if you are pro se as well. But just been there, got out. And it's just me and Chris. We don't have like a staff. So if you write to me, you can do lisa@beentheregotout.com and I will always answer.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Lisa, I just want to thank you so much. I mean, your courage, your honesty, your advocacy, girl, you're giving me vibes. You gave me goosebumps. You just made my heart all happy and dandy. I just got to tell you how great you're making me feel now. So I want to thank you so much for sharing my podcast to voice what you're doing out there. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure. And it's like it's so cozy. I feel so cozy, Iris.
I
It's
am
been such
so
a pleasure.
glad. Oh, I feel like one person's healing can ripple out into like healing for thousands. I feel like. So, mi gente bonita, if you're going through a high conflict divorce, if you're co parenting with a narcissist and you're scared, exhausted, or feeling alone, just please know you deserve safety, peace, and you don't have to fight this battle alone. And I want to quote what Lisa just said: turn your mess into message. And of course, I love what you said, Lisa. Puddle to ninja.
Yes.
That's how everyone starts, but there's always an ending there. Thank you, my guests, for tuning in. Please visit beentheregotout.com for resources, the community, the support. Lisa, this has been a beautiful conversation. To my listener, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Conversations with Iris. Con mucho amor. Thank you all.